Welcome everybody to another episode of Live Life by Design. I'm liking the shirt. How are you doing today?
You like the skulls?
And you're back in the state of Utah.
Surprise.
Your birthplace.
This is breaking news. This is the first time a public announcement.
What's the main reason for coming back home from LA?
I wanted to hang out with my number one best friend.
That's good.
Tell the people who your number one best friend is.
His number one best friend is yours truly, Jeff Mendez.
And
I'll reciprocate that comment.
You'll reciprocate it.
Yes. My best friend right here.
Yeah. Moving back to Utah, I would think, I grew up here. I grew up in Holiday. We met doing Vivint. Actually, the first memory I ever had of you, I thought you were an absolute tool. And then you get to, and I think one thing I appreciate about you, Jeff, and we'll get into this, is you're very serious. You have like a very serious demeanor, and you're locked in. And if anyone's like, who's locked in? Poppy is locked in. And then it's just been really cool, over the last 10 years to get to know you on more of a deeper level, and just feeling like you're open heart and you care about people, and, you were striving for excellence in everything you do. And, that first moment I met you, I remember feeling like, well, this guy's really intense, like it's too much for me. And gradually over the term, we got to know each other, and just building those friendships in Utah and the foundation. I've got my family here, amazing friends. Alchemy Sales Coaching has grown and expanded, and it tends to have a lot of door-to-door people here, and that space is here. And I think the reason I moved back was my ego loves LA. I mean, you've been to LA, you've kind of you've popped in, and it's a lot, right? Ego loves LA, beautiful women, there's good food, there's good weather, but I can't deny there was this internal calling of
How long were you gone?
3 years.
3 years.
Yeah, Venice Beach.
Venice Beach. Was it a combination of business and just personal life? I mean, obviously they're intertwined, but was it more of just for my own curiosity, was it more of a business decision, or more of this is where I'm at in my life, I want to get back to my roots, get back to my family, get back into that more of a familial state, if you will?
Yeah, and I think, I look at our friendship, we've known each other for a long time, and I feel seen and supported by you. And you were, I've gone through major transitions in my life. You've gone through major transitions in your life. We've had phone calls late into the night, talking about important, big questions about life. And LA kind of feels a little fluffy. And I feel like I was missing the depth of that. So while it's kind of outwardly expressively fun, and I've got, and don't get me wrong, I have amazing friends there who I've got really strong connections with, but the overall energy is a little bit more fluffy. And wanting just kind of return back to your point, your roots, family, people who feel like I know me the best and can support me in the vision, and I can support other people. And so it was kind of this coming home moment to really just lock in.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go back to your number one and direct to home. 2012?
2014.
2014.
No, my number one year, the year I was...
No, your first year.
First year was 2011.
2011.
But I only went out for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, so that was your final El Paso year.
Yep, that was the year my dad died.
2011.
2011 is when my dad passed. I probably knocked a total of 7 weeks. I had a deal with Casey Baugh where he was like, hey, we want to support you. I know your dad has cancer. If you decide to go out, I will buy your plane ticket to and from Utah as many times as you want to go see your dad, and we fully support you. So I agreed to that. It was an awesome offering. And I sold 50 accounts in 2011 in about a couple of weeks. And that's when that paradigm shift happens, where it's I can make money on production rather than time. If I go out and produce well, I'm kind of in charge of my income. And that's when the mindset shift happened. And then that end of year incentive was a cruise. We go on the cruise. I didn't know anybody. I actually roomed with Dusty Wynn. This is the first time I met Dusty Wynn, who's now killing it. Shout out Dusty. And I had a conversation with Seabaugh at the top of the cruise ship, and he said, I want you to go all in on this thing. No plan B, commit to things for 5 years. And then rolling that in, 2012 was the first year. So my real first full summer doing door to door, I was managing 30 people.
And then who brought you in 2011?
We were not going to use his name because he's not an ideal stand-up citizen. But basically, when I met this dude, I'm like, vibes are off. Don't trust this guy.
But
not
hold on.
good.
But so it wasn't a friend. It was somebody in the industry.
I was a cold recruit at the University of Utah.
So tell me how that transpired.
Great story. So think 2011, what's going on, right? iPhone just came out. People are rocking the True Religion jeans. Got the
iPhone came out in 2008.
But like people didn't have it, you know.
Okay.
Like if you saw someone with an iPhone when you're like
They're
19
cool.
years old in college,
Got it.
like you can't afford that, you know.
Got it.
He's got
So this guy has an iPhone, True Religion jeans.
True Religion's on, G-Star jacket. He's got a booth at the University of Utah, and straight up, I'm like walking to like econ class. Mm-hmm. He's like, "What's up, bro? What are you doing this summer? You want to go make $50,000?" And I'm like, literally roll my eyes, and I'm like, oh boy, because you know the persona of the door to door in that space is like douche bros, sales, like scam. And I said, show me what it is. I said, I've heard about it. I don't know anyone who's in it. Just like, show me. Slaps a pay scale in front of my face. It's like, if you go out and crush it, bro, you'll make 75K, you know? And I asked him, I'm like, okay, this was before Wolf of Wall Street, but I had a Wolf of Wall Street moment where I was like, all right, if you're so good, show me your bank account. And he pulls out his iPhone. I was like, damn, you know, goes to his Chase bank account. And he shows me his checking account. There's like 60 grand in it. When you're 19 years old and you're making, you know, hourly, and you see $60,000 in a checking account, it's $1 million.
Yeah.
I'm like, this dude's a millionaire. And so I'm like, hey, I'm interested. And so he then was like, okay, we're going on a preseason trip in like a couple weeks. I'll pay for your flight. Just come out. I'll teach you how to do it. And I'm like, okay, I'm in. So I show up. We go to Compton, California, is where our trip was. This is APX at the time. And I show up. The dude didn't even put me in the system. Like, I don't have a badge. I can't even run credit because I'm not even in the system. And I'm like, dude, what am I, like, I didn't know what needed to happen. And he's like, well, just sell in my name. And I'm like, whatever. So this is a true story. I don't know if you know this, but he gives me, I watch him for like a couple of doors, and he's like pitching like, do you hear that people are cutting the phone lines? Like, everyone's breaking in out here, like promotional, free system, free. And I'm just like, this doesn't feel ethical at all. And so I'm like, let me go on my own. So I swear, first door I ever knock in my whole life. I go up and I knock on the door. Guy answers, and I said, I'm like shaking, and I have my slick, and it's the 2 gig panel. And I was like, hey sir, we're here to upgrade your alarm to wireless. That was my pitch, first words. And he says, oh, I've actually been meaning to do that. Come in. And I walk in, and it's like, to this day, the easiest sale I've ever had in my whole life. He's like, yeah, I've got an older landline system. We never use our landline. Me and my wife have been talking about it. We need to do this. Let's do this. So I called Greg up. Oh, I just used his name. His name's Greg. Cat's out of the bag.
You don't say his last name though, right?
Yeah. We'll just call him Greg. And I called Greg. I'm like, hey man, I got a deal. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, he's like, I dropped you off 15 minutes ago. I'm like, I got a deal. So he comes over, and I, put it in his name or whatever. Anyways, I got another one on that trip. Still to this day, that first deal, easiest deal ever. And then he sent me a
Did you assume that all the deals would be like that?
Yeah. I'm like, oh, I remember leaving that house being like, I'm going to make $1 million. This is the easiest thing in the whole world.
Yeah.
Like, this is the easiest, what are you talking about? This is the easiest job ever. And left that house. And then the next day I got humbled, right? Like, I felt the job, and I remember sitting on the curb.
Probably the worst thing that could have happened to you is having that easy of a deal starting out.
First door I touched by myself.
Yeah.
Still to this day,
it's not good.
No. Well, it gave me a little bit of hope, right? So I'm like, okay, cool, there's something here. So I go get humbled. But what happened though was he paid me $400 for each deal. He shorted me. But anyways, I get home from that trip, and he sends me a Venmo for $800. And I was like, that used to take me a month to make that. And I made that in 2 days. Like, whoa. And that's when it's like the light bulb goes off. And then shortly after that, he was like, hey, I want you to meet my regional manager, have a drop in. I'm like, sure. And then he took me to Casey Baugh's house. And then when I met Casey,
who was the regional?
Casey.
So Casey was the regional.
Yeah, he takes me to Casey's house, and that's when I meet C-Baugh for the first time. And then once I met Casey, I'm like, okay, this dude's legit. I can trust this guy.
Was he wearing True Religions?
He was wearing True Religions.
Did he have an iPhone?
G-Star had the iPhone, had 2 iPhones. No, but actually what ends up happening was, on that note, so I got my first summer to Fort Worth with Aaron Ross, Brian Peterson, Ace Huddleston, Stephen Elliott, Topher Dibley, Parker Haleen, like wild bunch. And then 2 weeks into the summer, the guy who recruited me gets fired for stealing prescription drugs out of a customer's house. So now like my manager's gone. And so I'm just like a lone wolf. And I'm just out there, me and Topher Dibley. And it was just absolutely wild.
Topher, right?
I recruited Topher. And it was just wild, wild west.
When did Scott come around? When did he come along? Scotty
Coach Emilio came around 20. So I got home from that summer, got my back end check.
How big was it?
It was 50 grand. No. The back end check was like 25 grand.
From the 2011 summer?
Yeah. And then I later realized as I like went in that like Seba hooked it up, you know, gave me like some bonuses to keep me in the system. I didn't realize that until later, but I'm like, yeah, this is how much you make, you know? And then had that experience. I remember showing Scotty, I'm like, dude, I worked for 6 weeks and I just got this check. And he was like, I'm in. And then 2012 was the year I went all in.
Where'd you go in 12?
Houston.
Were you under a team or were you running your own team?
Me and Aaron Ross were co-managing, and but I brought 30 dudes, and Aaron brought like 40.
How'd you guys do?
Crushed. We did, I want to say 1,400. 60. My group did 1,500, and I sold 220. It was like a first time.
And then year 3?
Year 3 was Austin, Texas, and that was when I was the number 1 rep in Dynasty, and I did 265. Really, really clean business, really high quality. And then the year after that was when I was flirting with the top rep all summer. I installed 357.
That was Fort Worth.
That was because of you told us to go to Virginia. We went to Virginia in 14 and knocked South DC.
Was it good?
Loved it. Favorite stuff I've ever knocked.
You're welcome.
Yep. Best friend.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I saw you, was it in Austin that I visited your team and did all those role plays? Or was it Dallas? Austin.
You came out to, well, we moved to Dallas, Austin. You came out and saw us in Dallas. Half season we moved to Dallas.
Okay.
You
so
also
I remember being in Dallas.
You visited us in Virginia too.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you like doing that? Or was it exhausting?
No, I loved it. I mean, it's what I was built for, you know?
Yeah.
Would I enjoy doing it today with where I'm at in life? Probably not, you know what I mean? But back then, I actually enjoyed meeting a lot of people, training them. And then the effect, right? Just leaving and then seeing guys being able to do it on their own. That's super satisfying.
Do you remember when we had this conversation? You came into a training in DC about one-leggers. And you were like, I can't remember, you gave some like crazy training. But like, you can sell one-leggers, this is how you do it, you know? And then I went out and I had like 5x3 and I sold 5 one-leggers and I was texting you. I'm like, thank you, you know? Do you remember that?
I don't, but I remember you playing Grant Rents.
Oh yeah.
That's when I first got introduced to Grant Cardone.
I remember I found Grant Cardone on a Twitter rabbit hole one time in 2012. He had like 300 followers. And that's when I got introduced to Grant. And then remember, I talked all of us into going to his thing.
In Salt Lake.
It
was a free event.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then after that, I hired him to come into Vivint and do a presentation.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so through all these years, life lessons that you've learned, just being in the direct-to-home arena, you know, from 2011, when did you get off the doors?
I did a little consulting for Vivint in 2020. I did like a special training thing with Brad Rossiter to help Brad Rossiter's team. That was my last.
So 10 years.
10 years ripping.
Some of the most defining moments that have shaped a lot of who you are today.
Again, I'm not just saying this, but literally working underneath Yubo and Casey, Yubo and Casey has been transformative in the sense of like the personal human development piece of it all.
Isn't it crazy that we didn't spend too much time on the actual transitioning, closing, overcoming objections? We spent a lot more time on the human development
Was
side.
that intentional?
Always intentional. You know, it's what we talk about. It's, you know, and people have heard the 3 S's, right? State, story, strategy. I think so many people in business, they want to go into strategy, but if you don't get the state right, if you don't have the proper story, the proper nervous system, the strategy, the role playing, none of that stuff's going to really matter. You got to get this right. Once this is right, the confidence and the conviction is there, and the purpose why you're doing the things that you're doing, that's when it really makes an impact.
Yeah, and I'm curious for you, because I actually don't know the answer to this question, is you look at like a Seba and you know that like Stephen Covey is like his guy. And like for me, everyone who knows me personally knows I love like Michael Singer is my guy.
Yeah.
For you, who is like that?
It's a good question. I don't think I have one guy. I think I have a lot of guys.
Who are they?
A lot of mentors. I mean, if you're talking leadership, one of my go-tos is always going to be the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John C. Maxwell. We brought him into Vivint. I interviewed him. I'll be honest with you. For me, he's way better in books than he is in person. But I'll forever be grateful for, that series of books that just talks about pure intentional leadership and the power of influence and how you need to always remove the lid and how when the true leader speaks, people listen. So I knew, listen, if I really want to be a person that inspires and that leads and that can move and shake and create really big teams, I have to be that person of influence. And the only way I can be that person is if I do really big things so I can become immortal, if you will. So when I first joined Vivint in 2008, I asked around and I said, hey, if I want to become immortal here, how many personal accounts do I need to sell? And the response was 100. I'm like, I don't think you heard what I just asked. I said immortal. I didn't say okay. I didn't say good. I said immortal. He says, what are you talking about? No, I want to know what it's going to take for me, my rookie year, to be in the Hall of Fame here. I'm not joking. What's the number? He says, dude, if you can sell over 200, that's no, immortal, 300. I was like, done. 300 it is. Did 50 preseason, right? 250 summer. But that way, when people walk into the room and you're training, they're going to listen to you. They're not going to listen to the guy that is doing 50, 100, whatever. If the guy that does 300 is in the room, they're going to listen to that guy. Law of E.F. Hutton. When the true leader speaks, the people listen. And then, what I always believed in was you do personal production to build teams. You don't do it for the paycheck. You do it so you can build teams, regions, divisions, companies, etc. So it's the cart before the horse. But, John C. Maxwell there. And then I look at a lot of athletes. Kobe Bryant was always one of my top inspirations as far as work ethic is concerned. Eliminating all excuses, job ain't finished, Mamba type mentality, just going for the jugular in a good way. Just being feared by opponents because every single day you're going to bring your best. Same thing with Michael Jordan. Yeah. So I would probably say those three. And then on a personal front, my dad, I always, put him as one of my heroes as far as a person of integrity. Your word needs to be impeccable. Trust is earned in drips, lost in buckets type of thing. So that would be my response there. But I've always been a student of many, many, many different, people, depending on the topic.
Yeah, and I'm curious because it feels like you've gone through a big evolution. And I mean, your last 15 years, you're a totally different person. And as I
feel like I'm a different person from last week. So one of my goals is to always be evolving for the better.
Right. And I think you've had some moments along that journey where there's been big shifts, kind of come sudden as you've kind of opened up and now you're making a bigger impact on a bigger level and really focusing on, making impact through your real estate and live life by design. And you talk about continuous learning, right? Always changing. Is there someone, maybe this isn't like a Mount Rushmore person, but is there someone right now where you're their work is really resonating with you?
I don't know if I have that one guy. I said, I usually am not very unilateral with that form of thinking or absolutist. I think people that are very absolutist and follow one dogma, one trend of thought, there can be trouble along the way. So I try to bifurcate. Okay, this guy, I really like what he's saying about, sleep patterns. This guy, I really like what he or she says about breath work. This guy about work ethic. This guy about leadership. This guy about private equity, venture, real estate, whole person paradigm, the whole nine. So that would be my response there. I don't think it's one singular person or guru, if you will. I think it's just many, many. That's why I always say there's no such thing as a self-made man or self-made woman. Whoever says that, it's not true. I think ego is talking there. I think we're all bits and pieces of many, many people that are around us and have come before us and that have helped us along the way. So I try to pay a lot of tribute to that. But yeah, it's not one sole, one sole mentor, one sole source. I think it's
and I think along our path, teachers show up and you kind of resonate with someone's message and then you kind of grow out of that one and adjust and kind of evolve and change.
No, dude, it's things that I may have felt are wonky in the past are now really important to me. Such things as even as simple as meditation. Yeah. Right. And I think it's times and seasons. I mean, when you met me, you said it, tool. Why?
Yeah.
Because I was in production mode.
Yeah.
For me, I mean, when you, and I think it still happens today, right? When people first meet me, because I'm a very focused, very
intentional. I would use that word.
Human. You know, I knew that I had to be all in during those moments so I could live more of this life by design today. So it was my design work. I did it with pure intention. But when the student is ready, the teacher appears, right? And now that I'm in this realm and I have more of that free time, if you will, then I'm allowing more of those things into my life.
Is there anything you've changed your mind on recently as far as like health and wellness, well-being?
It's every day. I mean, it's sometimes you think that this is good for you and then you do more research. And honestly, sometimes it's like, it's exhausting because the first time I found that milk was bad for you, I was 19 and my world almost like ended. Milk. Like milk is terrible for you. Yeah.
Okay.
It's bad. All the chemicals, all the pasteurization process, the whole nine. It's like poison. So I get into this seminar, you know, I'm actually ready to go on my mission to Panama. We're in the training center and there's a doctor there trying to give us best practices for nutrition and health. And the literal first thing that he says in his opening statement is, don't drink any milk on your mission. It's poison for your body. All the chemicals, pasteurization, et cetera, like I mentioned, it messes up your digestive system, the whole nine. And I was like, what in the world? If what he's saying is true, like, and I believed that lie for so long with got milk campaigns and everything. And as soon as I would wake up, my mom would give me a glass of milk. I'm like, what else is going to get challenged here? So, but no, listen, I think there's always things that you're pivoting and improving on. And listen, I once had a friend of mine, he would mess with me and say, you've changed. He'd say it to everybody. Sure. You've changed. And I used to be like, what are you talking about? But then I realized he was being sarcastic. He was joking. And as I've evolved as a human, as I've grown, you know, if he were to say that to me again, I'd be like, thank you.
I hope so.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Can I ask you a deep question? Do you want to go deep, or are we going to keep it light, or do you want to go vulnerable? I'm
going to ask you a question, and then we'll pivot back in your questions. That way, this is the Live Life by Design show, not the Alchemy show.
It's a combo. This is going live on the Alchemy podcast too. We're interviewing each other.
So
that's
Alchemy,
what best friends do.
Tell me why the name Alchemy and what alchemy represents. What alchemy is.
So the way I define alchemy is the process, not the end mark, the process of human transformation, right? We talk about changing, and fulfillment. So the process of human transformation and fulfillment. So to echo with what you're saying, there is no finish line, in my belief, there is no finish line of life. Like no one's like completed it and been like declared the winner of the human race. There's always something to learn. We can always get better. We can always change. We can always evolve. So we're always in a process of alchemizing. And one thing...
Explain what alchemizing is.
Yeah, it's evolving of who we truly are. It's learning, it's growing, it's expanding, gaining new knowledge, new insights, new growth, truly stepping into our potential. Not physically, mentally, are we learning? Are we growing? Are we expanding? Emotionally, are we connecting? Are we loving? And spiritually, are we building a relationship with something beyond ourselves? Whether you call that God or universe, divine, whatever, or the most improbable probability of science, like whatever it is for you. And so alchemy was launched because of my own story, process of my experience of being very out of balance. So when I was in Vivint, it was very much go, 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 produce, 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 with the intention, subconscious intention of gaining validation. Whereas like if I can just be the top rep and have the top office, then you and Casey and Bo and Todd and everyone will tell me I'm great. And then finally, I'll be good. And then people will see that I'm successful, and the girls will see that I'm successful, and my friends will approve of me. If I can just get all the things, then eventually I'll be happy. Very much living in happy when syndrome.
Sure.
And found that it just doesn't work, right? It feels like it doesn't work. And those that know me, who have read my book, Holy Shit, We're Alive, I talk about my personal experiences in 2017. Like growing up in Utah, it's kind of, you're in a box, and you don't realize that. And I was doing the Vivint thing and doing the Mormon thing, and was doing everything I was supposed to do, and was not fulfilled. I was sad. I was frustrated. I was lost. And my journey to kind of breaking out of that box involved psychedelic medicine. That's not everyone's route. It's not the only route. But that was my route. And I remember going through that process. It was very helpful for me at that time, and also really scary because I felt like I was getting outcasted. Like, people were like, Doug's lost his mind. Doug's gone crazy. He's not what he used to be. Right. And especially working with some of that stuff, it was a really scary time because there's such a negative persona about it. And I feel like I kind of lost everything. But in that process of learning to regulate my emotions, to learning to heal myself, to learning to get clear and build a relationship with God, I felt like I was alchemized. And what happened was I found that I was much more effective at work because I had taken care of my internal state. And so you see this a lot, and I know you've seen this, where, especially in the summer sales program or in any business, people get way out of balance, where it's like, I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m. and David Goggins it and freaking sleep for 2 hours and freaking go sell 15 and grind all day. And then 2 weeks later, where are they? They can't get out of bed. They're going to the gas station. They're exhausted. And so the simple law of nature is every force action has an opposite and equal reaction. So if I go way over here, it's only a matter of time where I'm going to have to go way over to the other side to recover. So by alchemizing myself, learning self-regulation, dealing with my emotions, dealing with these traumatic experiences, and however big or small, building a relationship with my physical, mental, and emotional and spiritual health, it gave me a lot more endurance to work with my energies so I could actually be a better performer because I'm not swinging so far. And so that was kind of my experience. And I realized getting on the other side of like, I have so much more energy to go build a team or to go sell or to go recruit because I'm not out of balance. And so bringing that information to this space, a lot of my clients are in door-to-door. I have some not in door-to-door. A lot of them are entrepreneurs as well. But it's like, I think the number one skill any human being can make. If I had the world's attention and I could teach a 5-minute course to the whole world, I would teach emotional self-regulation. Because anxious, fearful, overwhelmed people make poor decisions. Period. So if I can learn to regulate, stay calm, stay steady, be okay with what happens, doesn't mean that it's right or moral or it's my preference, but if I'm okay with what happens, then I'm able to actually handle it. Right? As a father, you've got a different situation. Let's say something wild happens with your kid and they get in trouble for something. First step for you is like, you gotta be okay. I can handle this situation. If you're not okay with it and you're panicked and you're freaked out and you're anxious and you go to the principal's office for something, it's not going to make the situation any better. So whether it's with your business or your relationship with your family, if you can learn to alchemize, get calm, steady, self-regulated, now I can go deal with the pressing issue that's in front of me most effectively.
Yeah, you always say, on your social media outlets, etc., you don't have a sales problem, you have a personal problem, right? Like if you can but if you can work on that, then you can regulate, or you can work on the other things. Sean Aker talks about this all the time, and the happiness advantage. The premise of the book is there's so much research done on trauma, on depression, anxiety, all those things, but nobody really studies happiness. Mm-hmm. You don't really see a commercial on TV, prescribing happiness. It's prescribing antidotes to depression. There's a pill for that. So he says, we have all this information, all this research, all these case studies on depression and the causes of them. Why don't we study the causation of happiness? What makes somebody happy? And his whole book is that premise. And what it says is what you just hit on. Happiness, fulfillment, is the precursor to success. You saying that you wanted to be a peak performer to get validation and significance from Todd, Alex, Bo, me, Casey, whatever. When I do that and I get recognized, then I'll be happy. Yeah. It doesn't work that way. You first have to choose to be happy, regulate, like you said, and then you are ready and equipped for success.
Yeah, and I want to add to that. It's choosing to be happy regardless of what's going on.
Yeah.
Regardless. right? Your life is never going to be perfect in every category. You're always going to be dealing with something.
Life.
Always. So the opportunity here isn't to get rid of your anxiety, get rid of depression. It's working with it. I am anxious. I'm frustrated. I'm overwhelmed. I'm panicked. That's okay. I can handle this. I'm going to relax. I'm going to release, and I'm going to move forward. And if I continue to move forward with it, eventually it dissipates.
Yeah. I mean, and I say this all the time, you thinking you shouldn't have any problems, that is the problem.
Number one problem.
Problems are just part of life. If you didn't have any problems, you wouldn't be alive.
Yeah.
You'd be six feet under, right? You wouldn't have a pulse. Okay, you wanted to ask me something. What were you going to ask me?
Yeah, so we talked about like the spiritual piece, right? We talked about, you got your buckets, family, social, financial, right? Spiritual piece is that. From my perspective, watching you, it seems like you have leaned more into that piece in the last few years than you were maybe 10 years ago. Would I be accurate in that assumption?
I think that's something that you notice, but me, I've strived really hard to lean into all four.
Yeah.
The four being spiritual, intellectual, social, emotional, and spiritual.
Yeah.
But yeah, you must be asking me that for a reason.
Yeah, because I'm really curious of, in this moment, because obviously we can change at any moment, what role does the spiritual piece for you, what role does that play in your life?
I mean, it's everything, right? So if one of those four quadrants is out of whack, like you're just not that whole person. Like it's everything. So you can be the most fit human on earth physically, 6-pack, 6% body fat. But if your spirit isn't right, you're going to be empty. And
when your spirit isn't right, what do you do specifically to make sure you get that back up? I
just work on it. I have different things that I work on to be able to get there, either through reading, meditating, praying. Simple things as grounding, walking outside, my grass, barefoot, sun in my face, thinking about my kids, gratitude list, talking to my mom who's in the heavens, little things like that to get that spiritual connection. I don't think it's a mechanism of going to church and sitting, on a bench. Religion's always been a big part of my life, but I think there's a clear distinction between dogma/religion and then spirituality. I think if you don't work on the spiritual and you only work on the religion, you're missing out on a lot. Yeah. Regardless of your denomination, regardless of your faith.
Yeah. And I'm curious as well.
And hold on, I think a lot of people check boxes on the spirituality front instead of like really working and doing the deep work to get the spirit alive.
What would be an example of that?
I think, if you say, okay, I read the Bible today, or whatever you read, check it just by going through the emotion, which is better than not doing it. But if you really want to get to a higher state, then you actually silence the noise. If you get in your head, you're dead. You get in the gut, you listen to the gut, you connect. You get in isolation, meaning it's just you having to deal with you, and then you can see really the spirit. Because if you're busy doing whatever you're doing or just sitting idle in a congregation, I don't feel like you're going to get that spiritual connection that you would when you're just talking to each other. That's when it gets really deep, because you got to deal with this. Yeah. Viewers, think of the last time you're in isolation. Think of the last time you were in deep meditation and you had to deal with this going on and listening to your gut and listening to your heart. That takes work. It's not easy.
I love that, because it goes exactly with what I've been sharing. And what I want to share is just like learning to deal with what's going on. When you sit alone in silence, it's going to come up. Yeah. The anxieties, the fears, the panic, and can you handle that? Right? Can you deal with it and actually handle it and sit with it? Your ability to sit with discomfort is the greatest gift you can give yourself. And it's only a matter of fact, if you just get really, really quiet and sit in a room, it's going to come up. And what we tend to do, a common mistake I see people make, is we suppress it, right? That panic, that fear, that stress will come up, and then that's why we distract ourselves. We'll go on our phones.
That's our defense mechanism.
Right. Phone, vape, porn, alcohol, drugs.
Work
is a way to push that away. And here's something I've learned recently that I want to share that's been so powerful. And it might take years, and it took me years. If you can continuously sit with that energy and not use your energy to suppress or distract, if you can just sit with it and let it come up, and eventually it will go away. And what's behind all of that discomfort is bliss, enthusiasm, excitement, energy, engagement, and presence. And from my experience, most people aren't willing to sit through it, the pain, long enough to get to the other side. And I just want to encourage people, if you can just really focus on this practice of, I can handle my emotions, I will sit with any emotion, I won't run from it, hide myself, distract myself. What's coming behind that? It's a whole new life of just like infinite optimism. You'll be driving down the street. It'll be 4 p.m. on a Wednesday. And this wave of just like excitement and joy and bliss that normally you took the special experience at the yoga retreat in Mexico will just come naturally. And I think a lot of people don't realize what's behind their discomfort. And if you have the willingness to sit in that discomfort over time, there's a whole world just waiting for you.
Yeah, no, listen, everything that you just mentioned, I mean, it's accurate. It just takes work. And sometimes we don't want to face the work. Yeah. We don't want to face the music. We just, keep kidding ourselves and say, hey, I'm okay. And I think, there's a lot of coping mechanisms. You mentioned, alcohol, all that porn, all that stuff. But it may not be anything it may not be those substances. Like I mentioned, it could be work. It could be a multitude of things. Yeah. Not necessarily a bad thing and viewed as society views it. It's just whatever keeps you occupied in such a way that you're ignoring what you truly have to deal with.
I love some of those things though. What's your favorite way to distract yourself? Mine's college football on Saturdays.
Mine's probably work.
Yeah.
Just solving issues, getting things done. I get a lot of satisfaction doing it. And quite often, just that production is what really, I think, keeps me busy. Which is a superpower, and it's also potentially a curse if not addressed accordingly.
How do you know when you're out of balance?
So me, I don't believe in balance at all. I think it's a farce.
It's the Bezos harmony thing, right?
It's not even Bezos. Well, yeah, I mean, he talks about it. Yeah. No such thing as work-life balance. It's work-life harmony. I mean, he doesn't own it, right?
Sure,
he's said it maybe once or twice. But it's harmony. It's looking for harmony in all things. Because listen, at some points in my life, do you have to be a workhorse? I think you do. So you mentioned it, like some of these cold plunge, sauna. I am telling you right now, when they were in their grinding years, they couldn't afford a sauna. Cold plunges didn't exist. They didn't have time to meditate. There's just no way. They were in the grind. So I think it's actually a disservice when these gurus tell these young entrepreneurs to do all those things. By the time you finish the morning routine the way they've set it out, like you're exhausted. Your day is done. That's 4 hours worth of work, and you're just priming, you're just prepping, get out of here. So I don't believe in work-life balance. I believe in work-life harmony. So for me, it's having enough intuition, enough intelligence to know, okay, it's time now to pivot from this, move over here. Let's spend time with the spouse. Let's spend time with myself. Let's spend time with the kids. And harmonizing all those things. Because I think throughout the day today, I'll be in complete unbalance depending on the category. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like right now, I'm a terrible dad because I'm with you. I'm not with my kids.
Yeah.
In fact, when we get done here, I'll be on the soccer pitch watching my 12-year-old, score some goals. Yeah. Later on tonight, I'll be hanging out with the missus. We'll drink some mate. We'll hang out. We'll converse. I'll be a great husband at that point in time. So it's just learning how to harmonize with all that. Because on the flip side, if you're not careful, you can drive yourself crazy trying to seek that balance and trying to look for that perfection in all things. You just have to allow a lot of this stuff to just flow and just use your intuition and your intelligence to know where you need to be.
You said something really profound there that I want to highlight. You said you have to allow it to unfold. And I think that's actually a massive insight on life itself. Is so many of us are trying to go out and manipulate and force and angle it and control and get life to be the way we think that we should, and we burn ourselves out. But if you can learn to surrender, which is my favorite word, but doesn't mean quitting or giving up, but just really allowing reality to be what it is, one of my favorite quotes, if you fight with reality, you lose 100% of the time. Right? Life is going to unfold. It's going to not be a straight line. It's going to be rhythms and harmonies. And if you can just relax and allow those things to flow, it'll be very natural for you how to respond.
Yeah. So I think for me, I would elaborate on that. Because I believe wholeheartedly in living life by design. So some people might view it as very stoic, very calculated, which is fine. But when you're living your life by design, you're designing in such a way where you're allowing things to happen, things to occur. Now, I plan out my week. I plan out all 168. But since I'm doing that, there's free time, right? Because you're building it by design. You know what you're supposed to say no to and what opportunities you can say yes to. And it's not just this super like by the minute planning. It's actually a lot of free time because you're moving the big rocks in such a way in which you can have all these opportunities that couldn't be afforded to you because you didn't plan it out. You're just at the whim of whatever somebody else's plan is.
Yeah, I'll make an assumption. This is what I would assume you mean by live by design. It's planning in the things that are going to move the needle that are like non-negotiables. That this is like
that's part of it,
right? If I put this piece in, right, there's probably fit for all of your buckets, right? But also allowing time for the synchronicity,
it's everything.
One-off, like creating. That's part of the design. Is not having a schedule that's.
I think living life by design could even be the antithesis to that. Where, some people might think I have to have all these things on Saturday, all these things on Friday. That's not really living life by design. That's living life by by being busy. I don't want to be busy. I want to be impactful. I want to make a difference. So that's what it more means. It's just live the life that you're truly designed to live. We're not on this earth to just grind and that's it. I think it's part of it. But we're here to enjoy the process. And if you design it the right way, then you'll get that ultimate fulfillment of what life is designed to be.
As you're living your life by design, what is something in the future you're looking forward to? That's whether it's a trip or a foundation or service or like what is like the future life of Poppy look like as you build your life by design?
I think it's in the now. It's doing the things that I'm doing currently. I think if I had something in the future that I'm looking forward to, I'm kind of missing out on the present, which is the only thing I can control. So I don't think I personally have anything like in the horizon that's like, man, when we get this, I'm going to feel a certain way. Somebody asked me the other day, hey, if you could change anything that you're doing right now, what it would be? I'm like, nothing. I'm loving what I'm doing right now. And I would choose to do exactly what I'm doing right here, right now, because I feel like I've unlocked a lot of my purpose. I've unlocked a lot of my significance, a lot of the connections that mean a lot to me, because I've been able to check the box of certainty. I've been able to also check the box of uncertainty. Those are the two, number two human needs. You have to have certainty, making sure you have food, shelter, your bounties taken care of, and then you have variety in life too. So once those things are checked, then you can focus on these other things. And I'm really leaning into the significance, the contribution, paying it forward, creating value, building relationships that matter, and having a lot of fun along the way. So right now, a day of work for me, it's just pure bliss. It's tons of fun because I've learned how to embed the whole person paradigm inside of it. Did it used to be that way? No, absolutely not. When I was in that, the Vivint days, it was very unilateral. Like it wasn't a whole person paradigm approach.
Was there a moment you were unhappy where you're like, this isn't working?
No,
I got to make a change.
Of course.
What was the trigger moment for that?
I mean, in 2019, I knew that I was done. And that's why I had the conversations that I had.
Yeah.
And then that's when I chose to fully retire.
Yeah. So 29, was it more of like, was your family coming to you? Were you getting other insight? What was kind of the red flags?
Been there, done that. 13 years, kind of. I felt like I'd hit the pinnacle. There was nothing above. It's that you hit the certainty, no uncertainty, no variety.
Yeah.
Felt like the contributions were kind of getting stale, all those different things. And there's a time and season for everything. So at that point, it was like, okay, it's time to pivot out. And what's cool is I had already started working on other projects, mainly in real estate, that were really giving me energy. That were really capturing my heart and my mind, that I was ready to lean into even more.
What was that process like leaving Vivint? Because in my experience, so many people have their identity wrapped up in that thing. Was there a moment after you left where maybe your foundation felt a little shaky, or was there any?
Yeah, it could have been the first 6 months or so, just because your phone stops ringing, the text stop coming through. You're not having to plan all these meetings, all these seminars, bringing in all these speakers, so forth and so on. So definitely that void is there. And I'm a busy person. I love being productive. So if I would stay idle, there's a saying that says that idleness is a devil's workshop. If I stayed idle, those thoughts, those feelings, that FOMO, if you will, would creep in even more. So I, by design, made sure that I was leaning into my other projects so that I could dissipate that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
where does the fulfillment, because obviously you do a lot of real estate projects, where does the fulfillment come for you in that? Is it doing a big deal, or is it like flipping a project, or is it providing housing? Like what gets you fired up
all
on the real
above.
estate?
I think a lot of it is just making sure that I get a lot of fulfillment in making sure that the investors are getting a product that they're really happy to be a part of, that their hard-earned money is actually turning into even more money. And it's not just the money, but what they're able to do with that, because what they're doing is they're buying more and more freedom. They're taking their active income, which takes blood, sweat, tears, and years, and then they're converting that income into more of a passive front so that they can have more time, more experiences, more mobility with their loved ones. So I just love the mission behind that, what it helps us do as human beings, and then just winning the game. Like, I love competing and I love winning. So taking an asset that's dilapidated, that has deferred maintenance, that just isn't performing at its best where it should be, and being able to go in there with our really good team that understands the knife fight and turning that asset around and getting it to a really profitable state and providing housing for people that they can call home and they feel proud of and that's sustainable. It's beautiful. Like, it's artistic. It's romantic. And that's what I love about it. And then I do a lot of, seminars, public speaking, talking about living life by design, and just being able to see the eyes in the room light up when they have solutions to issues that they were dealing with, and kind of a framework so they can live a more productive and more fulfilled life. And I say this all the time, we as leaders, we can save more lives than surgeons, because we're anticipating and we're intercepting lives before it becomes detrimental. When you're seeing a surgeon, more than likely you already have that condition that you have to go get removed or whatever. So we're going in there anticipating and helping people get on the right track, if you will, way before they have to get to the surgical table. So I take a lot of, I have a lot of passion for that. I take a lot of responsibility for that in a good way. And that's what gives me tremendous fulfillment.
And you do a really great job at it, brother. And on that note, you talk about speaking. We're stoked to have you out for Alchemy Fest, October 4th through the 7th in the Redwoods. And talking about that inner fulfillment piece, I intentionally curate these experiences to hit all four of those buckets: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. And so this event is really kind of the first of its kind for this industry in this space, where we're going to be secluded deep in the woods. I know it's a pain to get out there, but like, once you get out there, phones are off. We're going to have early morning movement practices, yoga, exercise, HIIT training. We'll have workshops to hit on the mental piece, right? You're going to come in, you're going to drop your knowledge on investing in real estate. You're going to have a plan for your business, plan for your teams. We're going to hit the emotional side with connection activities and opportunities to get other people and network and connect, be in deep nature, and the spiritual piece of, being deep in the nature and having the breath works and having those experiences and having the DJs. And so that's what that alchemy piece is all about, is hitting all four of those. So we're super stoked to have you out there, brother. And those that are listening, it's October 4th through the 7th in the Redwoods. Would love to have everyone out there and really just magnify the whole human experience. And so you do a great job with that, brother. And there's very few people, I've been to a lot of speakers, but there's very few people who have the ability to articulate such complex ideas in a way that you do, that simplify them in a very way. And I think you did that really, really well when you were training at Vivint, and you do it really well when you talk about real estate. I'll never forget, you came to one of our first Alchemy events 2 years ago in St. George, and it was like a 2-hour masterclass. I remember people were walking out of that on real estate, and people were walking out of there being like, that was a semester of college on real estate investing. And I'm curious, has that always been a skill for you, been able to like digest information and be able to articulate it simply, or how is that something you've worked on?
Yes and yes. It's come pretty naturally to me, but I've definitely worked on it, right, to improve that unique ability. And, I can say it because, I believe it. Like, for some people that might think like I'm bragging, but your opinion is your opinion. When I was on my mission, I met with my mission leader, and I asked him, hey, you knowing me and working with me for the last couple of years, what advice would you give me as far as my education is concerned? What would you study if you were me? He says, you need to study communications, but don't get a communications degree. Go get a bachelor's in English, and more preferably, go get one in writing and in rhetoric. And I'm like, why? I'm not going to be a poet.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be an author. Like, he says, no, you don't get it. The number one problem in business, which is life, so business and life, is lack of proper and direct communication. So if you can master the language and understand how to write and speak and take complex issues and make them simple, you will be lethal in a good way. You'll be able to like move mountains. You'll be able to be a really good like advocate of good, right? And he also said this. He says, you have a lot of power of influence, and you can either use it for good or for bad. If you choose the bad path, you're going to be really scary. So make sure you stay away from all the bad, because you're very, good at communicating whatever. But make sure that you're always on the path of good.
And that could have been easy for you given your upbringing.
Oh yeah,
that path.
So I said, okay, done, let's go. And then after that, I thought I would either go to law or MBA. I chose MBA. But, even going through school, I'd be in the classroom and I look around me and there's a lot of, future authors, whatever, in the room. And I was like, I was more of a technical writer, more of a technical speaker. But I just really wanted to learn what's a preposition, what's a linking verb, what's an action verb, what's a noun, what's a pronoun, all these different things, colon, semicolon, whatever. So that as I'm writing in emails, text messages, anything at all, I'm very, very confident in what I'm sending out, and in speech too. So if you know the rules of the game, then you can either, speak eloquently, depending on your audience, or you can bro it down. Yeah. So that's why I chose that. So taking these complex issues, I love the Da Vinci quote that says, simplicity is the ultimate form of sophistication. So if I can make complex and sophisticated issues really simple, that is very sophisticated.
Was there a time you realized you were good, where you're like, whoa, I'm actually really good?
Yeah. I mean, on my mission, that was probably the first. Well, it was interesting. Now that you ask, and I thought about this. In scouting, we were at this jamboree thing in Puerto Rico, and my group was choosing a leader, and unanimously, there's maybe a dozen of us, unanimously everybody voted for me after 2 days of meeting me. And I'm like, what? Me? Why? What did I do that's so different, so special for me to get all these votes? And then the guy said, you're just a great leader. We want to be led by you. And I'm like, what? That was my first aha, like, wow. What I say matters, what I do matters. My example, is being utilized, right? So, wow, there's some stewardship here. There's some responsibility here. That was the first time that I realized, okay, I might be a little bit different from, my cohorts. That was the first one. And then on my mission, it was a lot of leadership there. And, they would turn to me for a lot of the big issues and the big problems. And I had the ability of solving whatever was thrown my way.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
How do you navigate?
Even Walmart.
Yeah. I mean,
it's the youngest store manager in Walmart history.
Yeah. Because I was about to say, you managed Walmart's. How old were you?
22, 23.
And how big was the team you were leading?
I mean, every store had like 300 plus people, and you're running 3 full shifts. Yeah. You have a morning shift, a mid shift, and a night shift. So it took a lot of leadership to run that.
Do you feel the pressure of that? Do you feel the pressure of leadership, or is it something that gives you energy?
I do, and I do. It gives me a lot of energy. So do I feel the pressure, meaning I know I need to render a service, I have a duty of care, I have a fiduciary? Yeah, I take that very seriously. But I love the challenge. I really enjoy it. I crave it. If I'm not solving issues, if I'm not talking to people and helping them level up, there's a void there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in my experience, you're one of the most phenomenal leaders I know. You've greatly impacted my life. And I've taken a lot of the skill sets, I learned from you. I mean, I always tell people, because there was a time where I was doing a lot of training at Vivint, and everyone's always like, who taught you how to train? Who taught you how to sell? And I'm like, the Jeff Mendez video on Vivint, I watched it 1,000 times and I memorized every single word he said to a T, that it was so ingrained in my subconscious that no matter what the person said at the doorstep, I remembered what Jeff would say and it just naturally came out. And so I owe a lot of my sales skills and foundations to that training video.
Yeah, I think and I appreciate that. I think a lot of the training was you explain the whys. Like I'd give guys, hey, you got to figure out your why. And then if they understand the why, the hows are a lot easier. But even the transitionings, I'd break it down. This is why you do it. And this is how you do it. And this is the mechanics behind it. This is psychology behind it. And even on my teams, guys that were working with me, I'd stop them all the time. They're doing a great role play. They were saying the right stuff, right transitioning, right timing, meaning. But then I would stop them and say, Doug, I don't believe you. Mm-hmm. And they're like, what are you talking about? I don't believe you. I don't feel your conviction. I don't feel your confidence. Well, this is a role play. I'm like, yes, it's a role play. But you got to take this thing seriously. If you're not dialed in here, you're not going to be dialed in out there. Right. And just helping people.
And I love that you mentioned, I love that you mentioned the why piece, and because I remember doing a training video. It was the first of its kind at Vivint, where I did a in-home presentation, but I did it with a friend of mine. It was like a family friend, and it was a mock, and it was the first time. And I remember the film crew was like blown away by it, where I'd be mid explaining the close, and then I would stop and I would look at the camera and be like, "Hey, this is exactly why I'm doing this, and this piece is really important, so don't overlook it." And then I'd go back into it, and then I'd stop. And the reason I said this is because of this XYZ 1, 2, 3, and then I'd continue. And then the reason I did this transition, and so I was explaining the whys of why I was doing what I was doing, learning that from you and whatnot. And that video, I think at one point was the most watched training video in Vivint history.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, on with this. Great combo. I'm sure there's a ton of gems. Live life by design. We've talked a lot about it. I always love ending the show with this question. What does it mean to you?
Living life by design to me is, I'm going to emphasize the life part, right? I believe that life is the truest gift for everyone. And I also believe that life is our greatest teacher. We learn the most through, life is literally at all time. Anyone listen to this? There's something that life is trying to teach you by design. Right? Life is the teacher. There's a hard conversation you need to have. There's a job change you need to have. There's a relationship change you need to have. You feel it. You know it's coming on. You're avoiding it. And life is designed for your growth, for your development, for your opportunity to step into the truest, most authentic version of you. So the way I look at live life by design might be differently, is knowing that the true teacher in life is life itself in the moment that's in front of you. And it's asking you to do something by design to grow into the best version of yourself.
Okay. With that said, that's another episode. Thanks for being on, brother.
Love you,
Much
brother.
love.